Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Always fun to go deep.
Today we're going to be looking at some really fundamental OSHA definitions.
Yeah.
The kinds of things that we really need to know as safety professionals to make sure that we're doing things right.
The foundation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The foundation of everything else.
You got it.
And sometimes, these seem really basic
Oh, yeah.
at first glance, but
They are anything but basic.
yeah, they can get really
Do
complicated.
you think you know what an injury is?
Right.
Oh, but OSHA has ideas.
Exactly.
Different ideas.
So we're going to be pulling our information from a couple of sources today.
Okay.
We're going to be using section 1904.46 of the OSHA regs,
Right.
as well as a video from our friends over at Safety One Source.
I love those guys.
So to kind of kick things off, let's look at some of the terms that pop up all the time
Okay.
when we're looking at OSHA materials.
Sure.
So first we have the Act,
Mm-hmm.
which always refers to the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970.
Makes sense.
And then when you see you,
Yep.
that means the employer.
Right. To the point, no messing around.
Exactly. OSHA is talking directly to the employer.
Yeah.
But then even something like injury or illness,
Yeah, you were just saying.
which you would think is pretty
Straightforward, black and white.
Yeah, pretty simple.
But no.
It's not that simple.
No.
It has to be an abnormal condition,
Right.
like a cut or a poisoning,
Uh-huh.
and then has to meet other criteria as well
Right.
before OSHA will consider it recordable.
Yeah, it gets a little...
So already we're kind of seeing how these definitions have some layers to them.
Oh, yeah.
But I think one of the places where this gets really interesting
Okay.
for safety and risk management folks is when we look at the term establishment.
Oh, the establishment. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Because that could be surprisingly tricky.
Yes.
So let's kind of unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
When we're talking about an establishment,
Mhm.
how do we determine what is a single establishment
Right.
versus multiple?
So you're a safety manager.
Okay.
You're working for a company, and they have a construction site
Okay.
and a lumber yard.
Right.
Same address.
Okay.
Is that one establishment or two?
That's a really good question.
Big implications, right?
Yeah, I could see how that would.
For record keeping, for
Right.
liability.
Absolutely. Huge.
So how do we even start
Yeah, how do we unpack
to
this?
figure that out? Okay, so in most cases,
Okay.
a single location where business is conducted is one establishment.
It's
So pretty straightforward.
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's always but
Of course.
with OSHA,
Always.
so with that example that you gave, the construction site and the lumber yard,
Uh-huh.
could those actually be considered two separate establishments,
They could?
even though they're at the same address?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Because they're functioning as completely separate businesses. So they're doing different things. They're
Right.
keeping different records, different NAICS codes probably.
Gotcha. So even though they might be in the same physical location
No.
because they're operating so differently,
Totally separate.
they're considered separate
Exactly.
establishments?
Yeah.
Okay. But then this is where it gets even trickier.
Look.
Multiple locations can sometimes be considered a single establishment.
Oh, yeah.
How does that work?
So think about like a manufacturing plant.
Okay.
And then they have a warehouse a few miles away.
Okay.
And then their administrative offices are in a totally different location.
Okay.
But it's all one cohesive business.
Right.
Same management. Unified record keeping.
Okay.
OSHA might see that as a single establishment.
So it's not just about
There's location.
the physical location. It's really about
It's about the structure.
Yeah.
The record keeping.
and how the
management works, yeah.
That's a lot to consider. It is.
What about all the people working from home these days?
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. That's a good question.
Does every remote employee create a separate establishment?
So that's where section 1904.46
Okay.
gets really specific.
Okay.
And it says that employee homes are not separate establishments.
Okay.
They have to be linked
Okay.
to one of the employer's existing establishments.
It's record keeping.
For record-keeping purposes, exactly.
So we've got a lot to think about
Yeah.
when we're trying to figure out what an establishment
Really is.
really is
Yeah.
in the eyes of OSHA.
Yeah. In the eyes of OSHA, what are the implications?
Why is this so important for us?
Why do we care?
Yeah.
Well, think about it.
Okay.
If you misclassify your establishments,
Uh-huh.
your OSHA logs are going to be all messed up.
Right.
That's fines, that's penalties.
Right.
But it also messes up all your safety data.
Right.
So now you're trying to analyze trends,
Mm-hmm.
identify hazards,
Right.
improve safety.
Yeah.
You can't do that with bad data
Right. It's all
garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, it throws off your whole safety management system.
Completely.
And we need good data.
Oh, yeah. Data's everything.
To make good decisions.
To make good decisions, absolutely.
About safety.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really glad you brought up that video from Safety One Source.
Oh, yeah, they're great.
Because that's actually kind of what inspired
they're a great resource.
This whole deep dive.
They really are.
And for folks who aren't familiar with Safety One Source, they have a YouTube channel.
Check it out.
That is just a treasure trove of information for safety professionals.
They break it all down.
They do such a good job.
All those OSHA topics into nice little digestible chunks. Easy to understand.
Yeah. And they use visuals.
Yeah.
They have really good examples.
Real world examples, yeah.
So if you're struggling.
If you're banging your head against the reg book.
Yeah.
Go check out Safety One Source.
Yeah. I highly recommend checking them out.
Yeah, for sure.
So big shout out to Safety One Source for the inspiration.
Absolutely.
And for all the great content they put out.
Yep.
All right, so let's get back to these definitions.
Oh?
We talked about the act.
No.
We talked about you, the employer.
Yep.
We've talked about the nuances of injury and illness.
Right.
And that kind of surprisingly complicated definition of establishment.
Definitely complicated.
What about physician or other licensed healthcare professional?
Oh.
What does that one mean?
Another good one. Because it seems...
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, pretty obvious.
Like any doctor, right?
Right.
But it's not quite that simple.
I had a feeling.
I know you did.
There was going to be more to it.
So OSHA is talking about people with a legally permitted scope of practice.
Okay.
Meaning they're licensed, registered, certified to do certain things.
So it's not just any medical professional?
No.
It's got to be the right person for the job.
Specific qualifications.
Exactly.
Why is that so important?
Okay, so think about it.
Okay.
Sometimes OSHA says you need a diagnosis.
Okay.
From a qualified healthcare professional for something to be recordable.
Right.
Or to make decisions about whether somebody can go back to work.
Okay.
So you got to make sure that the person making that call is actually the right person.
Is actually qualified.
Qualified, yeah.
To make that call.
To make that call.
I see.
Big implications.
Yeah, so it's really about precision.
Precision.
When it comes to these definitions.
OSHA chooses their words very carefully.
Yes.
We got to pay attention.
We got to pay attention.
Every single word.
Yeah.
Every little nuance.
Absolutely.
Because they have meaning.
And make sure we're applying them.
And apply them correctly.
Correctly. Otherwise, we could get ourselves into trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, trouble.
But we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We talked about the act.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about you, the employer.
Yep.
We talked about all the details of injury and illness.
Right.
That surprisingly complex definition of establishment.
Very nuanced.
And then why it's so important to make sure that that physician or other licensed healthcare professional
person for the job
is the right person for the job.
Yeah.
So what are our big takeaways?
What do we need to remember?
What are the things that we need to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that even the simplest, most basic sounding OSHA definition can be way more complicated than you think.
Absolutely.
So you got to dig deeper.
Yeah.
You got to understand those nuances and then figure out how they apply to your workplace.
Right.
Your specific situation.
Your specific challenges.
Your unique challenges.
That's where resources like that Safety One Source video becomes so valuable.
Yeah.
And diving into those OSHA regs yourself.
Go to the source.
Yeah. Go straight to the source.
Don't rely on hearsay.
Yeah.
Do your research.
Absolutely.
Make sure you really understand.
Because that's how you're going to stay out of trouble.
That's how you're going to stay out of trouble.
Keep your people safe.
Exactly.
So for all of our safety pros out there, take a second look at those OSHA definitions.
Don't just assume you know what they mean.
You might be surprised.
You might be surprised.
By what you find.
Yeah. And that knowledge could save you.
Yes.
Could save you from making costly mistakes.
Absolutely.
And it can help you build a really strong safety culture.
This deep dive is really just the starting point.
It is. It's the foundation.
It's the foundation.
Yeah, we're laying the groundwork here.
Yeah, now it's time to take this knowledge and put it into action.
Go forth and analyze your workplace.
I love that challenge.
Through the lens of these definitions.
It's like we've given everybody a whole new set of lenses to examine their safety programs.
And that's where the real learning happens.
Yeah, and that's where those aha moments.
The aha moments.
When you're actually taking this abstract information.
Taking the abstract.
And turning it into concrete action.
Making it real.
Yeah. that actually make a difference.
And your workplace, yeah.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive will spark some follow-up questions.
I hope so.
For our listeners.
All of questions.
If so,
bring them on.
Reach out to us.
Social media, email, smoke signals, whatever.
To hear from you guys.
Yeah.
We want to know what you're thinking.
We're all about the conversation.
So we can all learn and grow together.
We're in this together.
As safety professionals.
Yes, absolutely.
Learning, sharing.
Yeah.
Constantly improving.
That's what it's all about.
You got it.
So for all of our safety pros out there,
yeah,
thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you being here.
On this deep dive into OSHA definitions.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was insightful.
You found it insightful.
Maybe a little surprising.
Maybe even a little surprising.
Yeah.
But that it gives you some new tools to think about.
New ways to think about how you're managing safety.
How you're managing safety out there.
In your workplace.
In your workplaces.
Yeah.
And remember.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, especially
when it comes to safety.
When it comes to safety.
Stay curious.
Stay informed.
Stay informed.
And stay safe out there.
Stay safe.
Right.
Until next time.
See ya. It can really derail your efforts.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of resources.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive was actually inspired by that Safety One Source video.
It was, yeah. Their YouTube channel
is
awesome.
They have so much good stuff.
So much good stuff.
And they always do such a good job of taking these really kind of dense topics.
Oh, yeah.
And breaking them down.
Digestible chunks.
Yeah.
Real world examples.
Yeah.
Good visual. Yeah. If you haven't checked them out, you got to check them out. I highly recommend it. Yeah. So big shout out to Safety One Source.
Shout out.
For all the great content.
Thanks for the inspiration.
Okay.
All right, back to the definitions.
Back to the definitions. We talked about the act. We talked about you, the employer.
Yep.
We talked about the nuances of injury and illness.
Right.
And that surprisingly complicated definition of establishment.
Yeah, that one's a doozy.
What about physician or other licensed healthcare professional?
Ooh, another good one.
What does that mean? So it sounds
pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, like any doctor, right?
Right. But I have a feeling...
Of course.
It's a little more complicated than that.
It is more complicated.
Just tell me more.
So when OSHA says physician or other licensed healthcare professional, they're talking about somebody with a legally permitted scope of practice.
Oh, okay.
So they're licensed, registered, certified to perform specific actions. So it's not just
any doctor?
Yeah, any medical professional. It's about
very specific
qualifications.
Yeah, sex.
So why is that so important?
Why do we care?
Yeah, in the context of OSHA record keeping.
So sometimes OSHA says you need a diagnosis from a qualified healthcare professional for something to be recordable or to make decisions about return to work.
Right.
You got to make sure that the person making those calls is actually qualified.
Actually meets that definition.
Yes, the definition, exactly.
Okay.
So it's important.
Yeah, it's all about being really precise.
Precision is key.
When it comes to these definitions.
OSHA doesn't mess around with their words.
They do not.
They choose them very carefully.
Yeah, we can't just kind of gloss over them.
Nope.
And assume we know what they mean.
We got to really pay attention.
We have to understand those nuances.
See the nuances, yeah.
And apply them correctly.
In our workplaces.
Yeah.
Big trouble.
We could get ourselves into some trouble.
Big trouble.
So we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
We talked about the act, you, the employer, injury and illness.
All the detail.
The establishment.
Tricky one.
And now physician or other licensed healthcare professional.
Gotta have the right person
for
the job.
So what are our big takeaways here?
If our listeners are going to walk away with one thing,
what do they need to remember?
What should they remember?
Yeah.
Even the most basic sounding OSHA's definition can have a lot of layers.
Yes.
A lot more complexity than you might think.
At first glance.
You really have to dig deeper.
You got to do your homework.
And figure out how it applies.
How it applies to you.
To your specific workplace.
Your unique challenge.
And your unique challenges.
Exactly.
That's where those resources, like the Safety One Source videos.
For sure.
And diving into the OSHA regs yourself.
Yeah, go straight to the source. Becomes so valuable.
Don't rely on what other people are saying.
Right. Don't just take somebody's word for it.
Do your research.
Yeah. Make sure you understand it yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's how you're going to stay out of trouble.
That's how you stay compliant.
Keep your people safe.
Keep everybody safe.
So for all of our safety pros out there,
yeah,
we really encourage you.
Take a look.
Take a second look
at those definitions.
At those OSHA definitions.
Don't just assume you know what they mean.
You might be surprised by what you find.
You might learn something new.
And that knowledge could be the key.
It could save you a lot of headaches.
To avoiding some costly mistakes.
Fines, penalties.
And really building a strong safety culture.
A robust safety culture.
This deep dive is really just a starting point.
It is.
It's laying the foundation.
The foundation for success.
So now it's time to take this knowledge.
Put it into practice.
And put it into action.
Analyze your workplace.
Yeah, I love that challenge.
Through the lens of these definitions.
It's like we're giving everybody
a new perspective.
Yeah, a whole new set of lenses.
Yeah.
To look at their safety program.
That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, and hopefully those aha moments will lead to some more questions.
Oh, yeah.
For our listeners.
So we always love questions.
If this has sparked some questions for you,
yeah,
we would love to hear from you.
Reach out.
Reach out to us.
Social media.
You can find us on social media.
Email, Terrier Pigeon.
Yeah.
However you want to get in touch.
We love to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
And we want to know what you're thinking.
Absolutely.
Because that's how we all kind of learn and grow.
We're all in this together.
As safety professionals.
Learning, sharing, constantly improving.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
So to all of our safety pros out there,
yeah,
thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you being here.
On this deep dive into OSHA definitions.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Hopefully you found it insightful.
Hopefully you learned something.
Maybe even a little surprising.
Maybe a little bit.
But it gives you some new tools.
New tools.
To think about.
New ways to think about.
How you're managing safety.
How you're doing things in your workplace.
In your workplaces.
Yeah.
And remember.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Especially when it comes to safety.
Especially when it comes to safety.
So stay curious.
Stay curious.
Stay informed.
Stay informed.
And stay safe out there.
Stay safe until next time.
See you later.